Hello, my friends. Have you ever had the irrational urge to throw yourself headfirst into a big, deep, dark hole in the ground? Neither. Not even for a second. Well, some people have. And for them, it's not irrational. It's actually a hobby. And it's called cave diving. Well, actually spelunking. Can I say that? Sounds bit wrong. In the simplest terms, cave diving is when you strap on a bunch of gear and squeeze yourself into water-filled tunnels, pitch-black caverns, and holes even Diddy would struggle with. That's insane. It's risky, it's dangerous, and for some reason, people love it. And recently, the internet has found a new obsession with these cave divers. This is one of few trends that I actually enjoy. I get a good chuckle whenever I see them, but it's not all slap and tickle on your hairy pickle. Because as funny as it is, it's also extremely disturbing. Because behind the memes are real-life tragedies. Stories of cave explorers willingly forcing themselves into their own graves are surprisingly common. Quick little disclaimer, in case you can't handle horrific death. Oh, coward. What? So if you don't want to deal with all that, click on that one. That one's a bit more fun. Try that one out. So with that, let's dive into the world of cave exploration. These memes sparked a pretty large conversation about cave diving. Most people asking, why do people even do it? If I may be so bold as to ask, how many cave divers do we think actually have a wife and kids? Just curious, because it kind of seems like a hard hobby to deal with. I'm not gonna lie. Hey honey, how are you? Me and the boys just got off the horn. Gonna go throw our heads into Satan's ass crack. Don't bother trying to call or message. There's no service in the lower mantle of the earth. We should only be gone for anywhere between 6 hours and a week. I did leave my will on the coffee table in case you want to have a quick peek while we're gone. And just in case I don't come back, you're good to raise the kids? All 10 of them? Sounds good? Good. Love you. So how about we just give you a little taste tester of the type of cave diving content before we get into some of the most horrific deaths. Okay?
I'm trying to crawl into the most claustrophobic cave in the world to face my lifelong fear of claustrophobia.
Surely there's a better way to face it. Like sometimes when I'm in the bed wrestling, okay, settle down, and someone grabs the doona, the covers, throws it over me, I enter a primal state. Millions of years of evolution gets triggered for me by a quilt. If you had genuine claustrophobia, I don't even think the pride of overcoming it would even get you anywhere near that cave.
We're in like a couple of inches of water.
What happens if you get jammed?
The last rescue took almost 9 hours.
The last rescue.
This is the first tight hole we have to squeeze through to continue.
That is tight.
For all my blind viewers, listeners, it's not what you think. It's just 2 to 3 men sliding into a slippery, wet, damp crevice. I promise this whole video is not just going to be sexual innuendos, by the way. It's going to be factual. It's going to offer value, entertainment, comedy, and a lot of sexual.
This is the Superman crawl. It's an opening less than 10 inches wide where you literally have to make a Superman pose just to make it through.
Absolutely not. 10 inches wide. That's like that? God. I definitely wouldn't be able to fit in.
Follow the cape through the dragon's back chamber and then go down to shoot. Yeah, that chute. After the chute, what you find could be the oldest known human burial by at least 100,000 years.
Imagine, right, you just crawled through the chute, fearing for your life, going through this uncharted cave, not knowing what's on the other side of it, and then you get down there and you find remains. Not only is it just about potentially being stuck underground for the rest of your life, it's also what you might run into while you're down there exploring those nooks and crannies, which don't worry, we're gonna explore further as well. Ray of sunshine this video. Grab the kids, whack me on the telly. Hey kids, are you aware of your mortality yet? Because you're about to. Where the hell is that hand coming from? How many hands are just hanging out in this cave? Is that all that's poking out? Oh. Oh. Me when she says nobody's home, me thinks.
Completely inundated with spiders, of course. I mean, it's the inevitable conclusion of what I am doing, but They're all over. They're raining down on me now. Can you see them? Hopefully you can see that, but they are kind of everywhere.
It's horrible. It's horrible. It's horrible. I thought by watching these videos, I would somehow get a greater understanding of what goes through these people's heads. But instead, I'm being left more complexed. Now that we know what it's like to be down there in hell, literally, let's get into the devastating real-life tragedies that inspired these memes. Crazy sentence. The first story that we're going to be talking about is the Floyd Collins cave tragedy, which was on January 30th, 1925. In 1925, one man's quest for fame and fortune led him deep beneath the earth, but it also led to his tragic, untimely death. Mammoth Cave, the longest cave system in the world, was close by, and cave tourism was booming. Cave tourism. Okay, they were really struggling back then, weren't they? No theme parks, no flow riders, no shitty clothes shop in every metropolitan area that sells $3 I Heart whatever place you're in shirts. Just caves. This tourism boom sparked an idea for Floyd. He believed he could find an unknown entrance that could be used to attract tourists and create a new business. So, off Floyd went. Working alone, he expanded a small opening and discovered said passage. He appropriately named it Sand Cave. Sand Cave? Really? Floyd? Okay. Good thing he wasn't in the naming business. Welcome to my new tourism attraction. Fun place. Maybe this is telling of why he got his head stuck in a hole. Over weeks, he squeezed through narrow tunnels and even crawled through passages as small as 9 inches high. But to make it a tourist attraction, he needed to make the entrance more accessible. But this is when tragedy struck. On January 30th, 1925, after hours of work, Floyd's gas lamp began to flicker. As he tried to leave the passage, the worst possible thing happened. He knocked over his lamp, plunging him into darkness. In the confusion, Floyd misstepped, and a 26-pound rock fell from the ceiling, pinning his left leg. To make matters even worse, a torrent of loose gravel buried him even further, trapping him 150 feet underground. Almost comical how that much stuff can happen to you so quickly. Just one horrible thing. It's like slapstick. Did he get a big egg on his head as well? Hold up a sign? When his family realized Floyd didn't return, they started searching the cave. They couldn't reach him, but they managed to speak to him through the narrow passages. Floyd was still alive, but trapped in a small crevice, unable to move. His brother Homer and his wife Marge. This is very quickly turning into a cartoon. This is horrible. It's not funny. It's tragic. His brother Homer was the first to brave the small tunnels to reach him and bring him food, but the rescue would take days, and time was running out. News spread quickly. A media frenzy erupted. Crowds of tourists swarmed the area. Some brought food, others brought souvenirs. Whoa. What? Souvenirs? What do you even sell at an event like that? Seems poor taste, selling souvenirs above someone stuck in the earth. On February 2nd, the first rescue attempt was made. They tried to hoist Floyd out with a rope and harness, but the plan failed. The rescuers quickly changed their strategy. They would dig through the rocks around him, but there was a problem. The cave kept shifting, and each attempt to dig made the situation more dangerous. Still, they kept going despite the threat of collapse. Could you imagine being down there? You're Floyd, stuck in a hole, a circus going on above you, and the earth around you could collapse at any second. Sounds quite literally like a biblical depiction of hell. Then, things took a turn for the worse. On February 4th, ice inside the cave melted due to the fires outside, causing water to pool around. The crowds of people who were swarming the cave all lit fires to stay warm because it was in the middle of winter. Said fire melted all the ice and flooded the cave. Are you kidding me? They all just find out. The fire is melting the ice, flooding. Oh, that's terrible. But I did put a deposit on the fire twirlers, so should I? The cold, damp conditions worsened and the cave passages started collapsing. Rescuers now had no choice but to dig a 55-foot shaft straight down to reach Floyd. They were on a very tight timeline. A radio amplifier was set up to detect Floyd's movement, and for days it crackled with the hope that he was still alive. The signs were faint but hopeful, and on February 16th, after 17 long days, the rescuers finally broke through the earth. They reached Floyd's location only to find that he was cold and lifeless. He had likely died several days earlier on February 13th. But even in death, Floyd's story was still far from over. In a bizarre twist, Floyd's body was exhibited in a glass-topped coffin for years after his death. That seems like a bad prank, does it not? He basically became a tourist attraction. Kind of ironic. He wanted to make one, ended up becoming one. But the body would eventually be stolen. What? How do you get away with that? But it was finally re-entered in the Mammoth Cave in 1989. 1989? 64 years. It was stolen for 64 years? But of course, it just gets worse. Because next up, we have the MOSSDALE cave incident, which happened on June 24th, 1967 in England. This disaster was so devastating, it forced authorities to seal an entire cave system forever. MOSSDALE Caverns is located in North Yorkshire, England, a place already feared by cavers for its tight passages, flooding risks, and remoteness. Great start. Already notorious. That's what I look for when I enter a cave. Can I get out of this place? Nope. Check. Thank you. Tight. But can I literally drown to effing death? Oh, I can. Keep going. And what happens if I do begin to drown and I want to leave? Oh, there's nothing for miles and kilometers and everything in between? Perfect. Get me in there. On June 24th, 1967, a group of 10 young cavers set out to explore MOSSDALE. They knew the risks, but they were very experienced. 3 hours into the journey, 4 members of the group decided to turn back due to the difficulty of navigating the cave. Among them was Morag Forbes, a name that would later become forever tied to this tragedy. As the 4 members of the group stepped away from the cave, they noticed dark rain clouds gathering overhead. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a passing shower, but the rain quickly became a relentless downpour, hammering the ground and feeding the hidden waterways beneath their feet. It didn't take long for Morag to notice the water rising. The trickle that had been harmless earlier was now a torrent. As the rain continued, she had a sudden, terrible realization. She turned back towards the cave entrance and froze. The entrance was gone. Completely submerged, the cave was flooding, and her 6 friends were still inside. I know torrential flooding is a thing. It just happens, like flash flood is a name for it. But how fast is a flash? I'm sure weather forecasts were around in the 60s. I feel like it'd be a gradual thing. You'd know there was going to be rain. You'd start hearing the rain. You would see the rain pooling. Say, oh no, we should go down and get them. It must have been a flash flood. Benefit of the doubt, I guess. With no way to reach them, Morag did the only thing she could. She ran. She ran so far away. She just ran all night and all day, and she couldn't get away. Come on, dude. She ran 4 kilometers across the moorland, soaked, exhausted, but fueled by pure adrenaline. We can do that one again. Pure adrenaline. That's a valiant effort. Cave rescue teams rushed to the scene, but the situation was worse than anyone imagined. The cave entrance was fully underwater. I mean, they had to act fast, but they were powerless. They couldn't do anything because of the friggin' water blocking the friggin' hole. This is when desperation set in. They began to dig trenches, trying to divert the floodwaters away from the cave. Hours turned into a full day. It wasn't enough. The flood had done its damage. When rescuers finally entered the cave, they pushed through the treacherous half-submerged tunnels. Deep inside, in a section called the Far Marathon Crawls, they made a grim discovery. 5 of the 6 cavers lay lifeless, and the final body was found the next day. There were no survivors. I guess it's a recurring theme with this topic. People know the risks that are associated with doing a dangerous activity like caving, especially at a place that is prone to flooding and tight passages and very remote, okay? So a slow response time. No one, obviously, ever should have to go through that, no matter if that is your hobby and you run the risks. No human should have to go through that. Let me just preface by saying that. But at the same time, I think you know where I'm going with this. A level of personal responsibility for your safety. Years later, in 1971, with the family's permission, the bodies were reburied deep within the cave system by their fellow cavers. The final resting place is known as the Mud Caverns. Come on. Why couldn't it be the lovely, charming cavern where these great souls rest? Cavern. Hole. Mud Caverns. Surprised I didn't name it Torrential Tunnel. To this day, the MOSSDALE Caverns disaster remains the deadliest caving incident in British history. The fact that there's a ranking shouldn't even exist. Shouldn't have happened once. But the fact that there's a worst suggests that there's many. That brings us to the most infamous and most horrible caving accident that I think has ever happened. And you probably already know what what it is. The Nutty Putty cave incident, which happened on November 24th, 2009 in Utah. The story isn't just terrifying, it is claustrophobia inducing to the max. And by the end, you'll understand why the cave was permanently sealed with his freaking body still inside. On November 24th, 2009, 26-year-old John Edward Jones joined a group of family and friends to go caving at Nutty Putty Cave, a system known for its tight, twisting passages and dangerously narrow squeezes. Quite a Weenie Hut Jr. name, isn't it? Nutty Putty Cave. The name doesn't really match the dark history of it. You have some that are like, the devil eat your heart out, your soul, the devil eat your soul's tunnel. And it's just like a little local cave at the park. And then this one, which is the most horrifying cave that's ever existed, is called the Nutty Putty. By the way, he went to go do this exploration, left his wife and kid at home. I think that's what the memes are based on. See, the cave had actually been temporarily closed in 2006 after, guess what? Several rescues. If I may ask, how many rescues do you have to have before you maybe shut it off? Is this on them or is it on the authorities allowing shit like this to happen? Because there should be some sign with a bit of warning tape maybe. Warning, you will probably die. Still, despite all that, the group was excited. John hadn't been caving in years and this was supposed to be a fun, nostalgic experience. But at some point during the exploration, John and 3 others broke off from the main group. They were looking for a passage called the Birth Canal. And look, you may not know this about me. I have been a caver before. I did it for some time, 9 months to be exact. Also have made my way successfully, I might add, through the Birth Canal. And guess what? I'm not dumb enough to go back in. You can try. I'm not going back in. John was leading the way through the Birth Canal. And then he made a fatal mistake. See, he found a narrow vertical fissure that looked exactly like the entrance to the Birth Canal. It was tight, steep, and challenging. Exactly what he expected. Without hesitation, he lowered himself into the crack head first. But the thing is, it wasn't the Birth Canal. The passage John entered wasn't mapped. It wasn't navigable. As John inched forward, his body became wedged tighter and tighter. He was trapped, completely stuck, upside down in a space just 10 inches wide and 18 inches high. I just want to give you a little bit of filler information before we continue. When John was making his way towards the Birth Canal, he had to go through an area called the corkscrew. The corkscrew, given the name, is a passage where you have to sort of twist and contort your way through. It's very tight. And this is where a 16-year-old boy got stuck 5 years earlier. Now, he was 5'7" and 140 pounds. John, however, was 6 foot and 200 pounds. And the thing is, John knew about this, so he knew that he could not turn around at the corkscrew and was going to have to find another way out before he even went to the Birth Canal. If you know you can't physically turn around in a cave, let me think. Maybe don't go. So that's why he kept pushing further and further, because he couldn't turn around at this part called the corkscrew. Anyway, John's brother Josh, who had been following behind him, quickly realized something was wrong. He tried to pull John back by his legs, but it was impossible. Gravity was against them. After failing to pull John out, Josh went to go get help. And that is when the rescue mission from hell began. The first rescuer arrived within an hour. He squeezed into the narrow crawlway until he reached John. By the way, people that do that, that's the only really acceptable caver, are the ones that pull other cavers out of their bullshit scenarios. Because you got to have the skill to pull someone out of a hole, and you've also got to have the bravery to go in said hole. Nothing short of legends, these guys. He squeezed into the narrow crawlway until he reached John, but the situation was worse than anyone had imagined. John wasn't just stuck. His body was positioned in such a way that the harder they pulled, the more his chest was compressed against the rock. Just a quick wellness check. How you traveling? Let's just get through this. John was still conscious. He was praying, talking about his wife and kids. He apologized repeatedly to the rescuers. He knew the situation was dire. God. More rescuers arrived. Over the next 24 hours, a team of more than 100 people worked tirelessly to free him. They even set up a complex rope and pulley system anchored into the cave walls with bolts. By this point, John had been upside down for nearly 24 hours. His heart was failing from the constant strain, the lack of circulation, and the unnatural position of his body. He was losing consciousness more frequently. At 11:56 p.m. on November 25th, 2009, after 27 hours trapped upside down, John Edward Jones went into cardiac arrest and died. And then came another grim reality. Retrieving his body was impossible. The passage was too narrow and far too unstable. After days of discussion, John's family agreed that the cave would become his final resting place. Officials sealed the passage with explosives, collapsed the chamber where he died, and poured concrete over the entrance. Nutty Putty Cave is now a tomb. No one will ever enter it again. That was a lot. I'm not gonna lie. That was a lot. If you're still here, trooper. The realization of being stuck hundreds of feet underground is terrifying. But what's more terrifying is the realization that you're not alone. There's been a multitude of terrifying things that people have found while cave diving. The first freaky find is the bear that woke up. On a freezing February day in 2019, photographer Corey Arnold followed wildlife biologist Wes Larson into Bryce Canyon National Park with what seemed like a straightforward mission. Swap the batteries on a bear's tracking collar. What's going on here? Is this a Red Dead Redemption mission? Also, throwing a bunch of names at me. Felt like I was reading an encyclopedia. The bear, after all, was supposed to be hibernating, but as they crawled through a narrow sandstone tunnel reeking of wild animal, something felt off. No shit. Suddenly, Wes and his brother Jeff came rocketing backward out of the tunnel, eyes wide with terror. They darted the bear, but it was awake. When Corey followed, the sight was seared into his mind. Two gleaming eyes locked onto him in the dark. The bear charged, even half sedated, its bulk barreling through makeshift barriers like twigs. In a frantic scramble, Wes jabbed the bear again, and just as it burst from the cave, the tranquilizer kicked in. The bear collapsed, sliding down the hillside, taking Wes, Jeff, and Jordan with it. An avalanche of fur and fear. Sounds like a scene from Grown Ups. Their fall was halted by a tree, and then came the final grueling task, hauling the 350-pound predator back into its den before it woke again. By the time they finished, sweat-soaked and trembling, Corey had his photo, but he also had a vivid new nightmare. I don't want to be a pessimistic grouch on what has otherwise been quite a very happy, optimistic video, but three blokes tackle a bear, slide down the mountain, bring it back up the mountain. If guys weren't known for being extremely truthful about stories when no one else was around, then I'd have a few questions for this one. Or how about the devil of the PUTTY mines? Don't know if I'm pronouncing it. Also, don't have enough energy to look it up. Deep within Bolivia's Cerro Rico mountain lies a labyrinth of tunnels that once produced more silver than anywhere else in the world. But beneath the surface, miners fear something far more sinister than cave-ins or suffocating darkness. They fear El Tío, the Lord of the Underworld. The effigy, when you finally see it, is unforgettable. A leering, devilish figure sits adorned with gifts, cigarettes stuffed into its mouth, alcohol pooled at its feet. Despite their Catholic faith, miners make these offerings to ward off El Tío's wrath, believing that his fury causes the collapses that kill an average of 14 miners each month. Okay, 14 a month. You know what's more terrifying than the Lord of the Underworld? Negligent work health and safety. The idea that there's 14 fellas and ladies maybe perishing to their death a month per month, and they're spending their whole time giving this thing, what the fuck, giving this bum cigarettes and alcohol, meanwhile not spending a second to think maybe we could be doing something here. Standing in those mines feels like stepping into a different world, a realm where the church's rules don't apply, where superstition feels like survival. You know what other rules don't apply? All of them. Everyone. And perhaps in those pitch black tunnels where every creak could be the ceiling above you shifting, fear becomes the only god that matters. But it's still not as terrifying as the ghost bride of the Hellfire Caves. The Hellfire Caves of Buckinghamshire, England, wind deep beneath the Dashwood Mausoleum. In the 1700s, these man-made caverns hosted secretive meetings of the notorious Hellfire Club, rumoured to engage in occult rituals and hedonistic rites. But one ghost, they say, never left. Suki, Buckinghamshire, England. Suki. Did they get inspiration from The Ring? Was The Ring around back in the 1700s? Suki, a local barmaid, believed she'd found true love when she received a note from a wealthy suitor asking her to meet in the caves. Okay, this is a long time ago. People are still falling for scams today, not far off the whole Nigerian prince. Sometimes you might find yourself in a vulnerable position. Who am I to say? But what I can say, I don't know if a note from a wealthy suitor would draw me into a cave. Was there also a trail of candy and a milk crate with a stick holding it up at the end of it? That's my take where this story's going. Giddy with excitement, she dressed in her finest white gown and hurried into the tunnel. But guess what? It was all a cruel prank. The letter had been a lie. What? No. The letter had been a lie, written by local boys who ambushed her with jeers and stones. What the hell is a jeer? So a jeer, like just making rude remarks at her. I love that it's sort of phrased in like it's a weapon, which it can be, depending on, I guess, how effective you are with them. Why would people just throw stones at other people? Why was that a thing that ever happened? Suki, in her white gown, tripped, fell, and never rose again. Now, visitors claim they still see her, a pale figure drifting through the shadows, the weight of betrayal keeping her tethered to the darkness. Photographs have captured her eerie silhouette, a lonely bride forever waiting in vain. Okay, that's a bunch of gobbledygook if I've ever seen it. Sticking to the spooky, creepy ghost theme, we have the strange altar in the Estonian cave. In 2022, recent, a Reddit user, horrifying, need not go further. A Reddit user named Snilgson was wandering through Estonia's wilderness when he stumbled upon a cave, and he could not resist exploring. The further he ventured in, the colder the air seemed to grow. At the cave's end, his flashlight revealed something chilling: an altar surrounded by faded flags and household objects arranged with unnerving precision. Online, theories abounded: a cult hideout, a witch's lair, a secret gathering place for rituals. Some recognize the flags as Buddhist prayer flags, typically found in Southeast Asia, not Estonia. But something still felt wrong. The air was heavy, the atmosphere suffocatingly hostile. Nelson left in a hurry. Perhaps it was just a monk's meditation spot, or maybe, just maybe, something darker had claimed that space. Anyone seen Incantation? I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. Very scary. But what about mystical? Fantastical. How about the giants of Lovelock Cave? In the arid Nevada desert near Humboldt Sink lies Lovelock Cave. Okay, well, come on. What are we doing here? Humboldt Sink? Lovelock Cave? I don't know what's more made up. This story, or the names of the... well... technically, the names are made up. Forget it. In 1911, miners unearthed skeletal remains inside, some allegedly measuring well over 7 feet tall. I thought it was going to be like 10 foot. Definitely some 7-foot bloke knocking around in 1911. The Paiute people had long told tales of the Saiti-Ka, red-haired giants who feasted on human flesh. Generations ago, the Paiute warriors drove the surviving Saiti-Ka into that cave and lit a fire at the entrance, choking the giants in smoke and sealing their tomb. Can I just say, every ancient story goes so hard, it's almost worth not even believing in science just because of how cool these stories are. The miners found thousands of artifacts there, along with the charred remains of what might have been an ancient massacre. Modern experts say the giant bones were likely mammoth or bear fox. That's what I'm talking about, the science. That science guy, whoever he is, he's got an answer for everything. Know it all. I mean, who doesn't love the idea of lighting red-headed giants on fire in a cave? Let's have a little look at this, shall we? No. What? That is a giant. I don't know what woolly mammoth looks like that. No, I believe it. How about witches? You like witches? I got witches. I got plenty of witches. Which one you want? The gateway to hell. Cresswell Crags, England. Tucked away in the cliffs is a cave marked with hundreds of deep, deliberate carvings, circles, lines, and letters etched into the stone centuries ago. Archaeologists call them witch marks. Their purpose? To ward off demons. Locals once believed the cave housed a portal to hell itself. When crops failed or sickness spread, they blamed the dark forces that seeped from their cavern's depths. The marks, mazes, and protective symbols were their defenses against the unknown. Today, the cave is a tourist attraction, but guides tell stories of sudden cold drafts, of strange whispers echoing from the hole. There shouldn't be any whispers ever echoing from any hole, ever. If there are whispers echoing from your hole, you better get that checked out. If you live in Cresswell Crags, get out. Not because of the witches, because you shouldn't be living in a place called Cresswell Crags. Get a grip. What are you doing? And lastly, a very real story that is neither urban legend or myth or supernatural is the Lost Girl, Mount St. Helens, Washington, a place of raw, untamed beauty. In August of 2016, YouTuber Exploring with Josh ventured into one of its deep underground caves, his camera capturing the eerie stillness of the subterranean world. The silence broken only by the crunch of footsteps on volcanic rock, but then a voice, a child's voice.
English? I don't know you speak English? No English.
No?
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay, come with us.
Hey, Josh. Do you see those, the couple that was back there?
You wanna come with
Tell
us?
them their daughter's up here and she's scared.
It was a haunting moment. How had this little girl ended up here, so deep underground?
So they were like, okay, come with us. And, you know, eventually, I guess her parents were like yelling her name in their language. And yeah, she went back, but she started crying and stuff. It was kind of a crazy situation.
A happy ending, but a chilling thought lingered. What if Josh wasn't there to save the day? They would have been calling that cave Little Girl Death Hellhole, because they're a bunch of freaks. Poor girl, useless parents. Should be called Useless Parent Idiot Tunnel. I know this video's long. I've been recording for nearly 4 hours now, so that one wasn't so hot off the press. I think the press is actually on strike. We've watched the content, we've seen the horrific cave diving stories, and also explored some of the unusual, terrifying things that have been found in caves, but there's still one question. Why do they do it? Luckily, I found the answer. A lot of the thrill of cave diving comes from the unknown. It all starts with curiosity. It always does. It's the ultimate form of discovery. But it's not just the discovery, right? It's also the legacy. It's an opportunity to leave a mark. I'm not saying if you gotta go cave diving, your life is lacking purpose. I didn't say that. As you would know, cave diving isn't for the faint of heart, so it's also a reason for a lot of people to face their fears. It's not just about overcoming fear, it's about embracing it. And most importantly, it gives people a sense of camaraderie and identity. I don't want to yuck anyone's yum, but I feel like you can get that level of brotherhood, exhilaration, achievement, definitely moments of terror, just from going to the pub. Would you rather be stuck in a cavern or a tavern? So next time you're thinking of shoving your head in that hole that you know you shouldn't, think of this video. And also, don't go cave diving. I love you all.